Good morning, goobers. Fantastic Four is one of the most cursed comic book movie IPs in existence. It's always a guarantee at this point that every decade, a new take on the franchise will come out and probably bomb at the box office. And in some cases, not even release at all. Most of this is because of Fox. Back when Fox was Fox, Fox was really silly and funny and quirky. And they did this really funny thing where they forgot they owned the rights to the Fantastic Four. And as soon as they realized they owned them, they rushed to put one out so that they didn't lose them. This has happened twice. So today we're going to take a look back at all of the Fantastic Four movies that have ever released. But before talking about the movies that actually got to release, we must talk about a story full of lies, conspiracy, and betrayal. We need to talk about Roger Corman's Fantastic Four.
Look at you. The Fantastic Four.
Say that again?
This might be the most interesting movie I've ever covered on the channel. The story of this movie's production is filled with so much passion from its creators and the actors involved. The actor for Doom really thought out his performance for Doom later in the movie. He acted out with his hands not only because it's easier for the audience to read, he also did it because his performance was inspired by Mussolini. And I just think that's kinda neat. He was also adamant on re-recording his lines in post because the raw audio is not something he's proud of. It's like watching Star Wars before James Earl Jones redubbed Darth Vader. It's just kinda not good.
For all the trouble, I want you to feel at home!
But the problem is that they ran out of money in post and just couldn't pay him to redub it, which explains a lot about this movie. And because of this budget crunch by the end, the composers of the movie actually spent $6,000 of their own money to rent out a 40-piece orchestra to compose the music. And not a penny was wasted. I think this might be the best score of any B-movie slop that I've ever seen. It's kind of gas. After the movie was shot and trailers started going out to the public, Michael Smith, the guy who played Ben Grimm, spent $12,000 of his own money, paid for a publisher for the movie so that it could be put in magazines, and flew out the cast to events and cons and all of that just so that they could promote the movie on their own. They believed in this movie and wanted to spread the word as far as they could. For some of them, they believed it would be their big break in the industry. This movie was finally going to get their name out there in the public. But in the middle of this press junket that they paid for, they got a cease and desist. This was when they realized that this movie was never going to see the light of day and was always planned to be canned from the start. Bernd Eichner, who was an executive producer on the movie, took a big check from Fox to guarantee the shelving of this movie, and Roger Corman got $1 million for shelving it. This sucks. I hate everyone involved with shelving this movie, especially Avi Arad. Avi was in charge of a lot of what Marvel was doing at the time before Kevin Feige came in and then shelved him. Avi has said that he bought the original film and personally burned it in his backyard. This might sound harsh, but I wish nothing but pain and misery for you in the afterlife. I hope you make it to the gates of heaven and then God says, "Depart from me, I do not know you." There's hell and then there's where you're going, buddy. I've said this before, but I'm a firm believer that all of art should be produced and released to the public despite how bad it could be. The whole purpose of art is to be able to relate to the human experience, and the best way to do that is release it to humans. And worst of all, you go behind the backs of the creatives that were so passionate about this project and can it without even telling them. You've essentially ripped the experience of art from them. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the movie. Shocker, it's not good. And I love it. I think it's the only Fantastic Four movie to exist that properly sets up Doom and Reed's relationship before everything goes haywire. They were college friends that were studying in the same field that did the same experiment that would later give Reed and all the gang their powers. Doom fakes his death because of the disfiguration and gets shipped back to Latveria. Also, it's time to point out the biggest problem in this movie. Reed is a groomer. It's not great. Him and Ben live with Sue's parents during college, and he knows that she exists, and he even knows that she has a crush on him. And then 10 years later when they meet, they kind of just immediately start dating without any natural progression. Hey, Reed. What did you mean by this? This might be a bit of a stretch to say this.
Say that again?
But I don't think everything in this movie needs to be comic accurate. You can ignore the bad stuff. That would be completely fine by me. Oh, by the way, the Mole Man is also in this movie. Although he's not called the Mole Man because they don't have the rights to that character, so they just call him the Jeweler, and he grabs jewels. Shocker, I know. What the Jeweler does in this movie is he steals the gem from the spaceship that Reed is taking to space that would shield him from radiation. Surely Reed checks that, right? Spoiler alert, he doesn't check that. Anyway, they get blasted by radiation and they crash land in Latveria. Once they wake up, because for some reason they survived, Johnny finds Ben and Reed and celebrates that all 4 of them survived. All 4 of them. They kind of forgot Sue existed. That's a reference to the fact that she's now invisible. There's a scene that I kind of like after this where they're all sitting by a campfire in the middle of the wilderness at night, and they're just fearful of the future. They talk about these genetic mutations that are in their biology now that they have no control over, contemplating if they'll get any worse, and promising that they'll stick together. This is actually kind of a good scene, and I think this captures the essence of body horror that later movies would fail to do. Ben Grimm doesn't even change immediately. He's just there trying to comfort his own friends. And when he does change, there's no forced conflict between him and the team. They actually just kind of accept him as who he is, and Ben just needs time to accept himself. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful. The funny thing about when he changes is that the actor for Ben Grimm pre-accident is taller and bigger than the guy they got to be the body actor for the thing. The comparison between heights is kind of crazy because Ben Grimm is giant and then he just becomes this small little rock man. There's a lot to say about this movie and the story of its production, but honestly, I think you should go watch the 2015 documentary called Doomed, which is where I'm getting most of my information for this video. It's incredibly dense with information and the story. It's incredibly dense with information and perspective from the cast, and who knows, after watching that, it may encourage you to even watch the movie itself. But yeah, that's actually going to be my homework for you today. You gotta go watch that documentary. Make sure to take notes because there will be a test by the end of this video. 2005 Fantastic Four is my favorite Fantastic Four movie of all time. The cheesiest dialogue known to man, and the cheesiest acting known to man. If I were to make an Ivy League college essay about how the 2000s is where human civilization peaked, this movie would be at the core of the thesis. We got cool guys, snowboarding compilations, aura farming billionaires, and most importantly, sexism. We'll get to the sexism part later, don't worry. And all of this is true because of one character in particular, and his name is Johnny Storm.
Oh, you're hot.
Why, thank you, so are you.
Johnny Storm is a self-obsessed, narcissistic, womanizing man-child, and I love him. There is not a single second where he isn't thinking about himself or women. He's constantly aura farming, and he is the best part of the movie, hands down. His introduction is kissing a girl that's driving a car while he is driving a motorcycle. Later, he rizzes up a nurse to go snowboarding with him even though they're supposed to be quarantining, and while snowboarding he becomes a flying fireball, lands, is completely unbothered, and says this.
Care to join me?
He is him incarnate. It's very clear while watching this movie that this was the character that the writers cared about. Not to say that the other characters are uninteresting, but let's not kid ourselves here. They just ain't him. But with that said, Johnny needs someone to bounce off of in this movie. So here's the thing.
Say that again?
They put so much effort into depicting Ben's struggle as a giant monster. He can't sleep in normal beds because he'll crush them. He can't sit on normal stools because he'll crush them. And he can't even eat normal utensils because he'll accidentally eat them. And he can't even pick up the ring that his ex-fiance left on the bridge. That's so sad. And on top of that, Johnny is just around the corner to tell him how miserable his life is. This is peak fiction. Michael Chiklis was one of the only people on the main cast that actually read the comic books when he was younger, and he was a big advocate for the physical suit because they definitely could not pull it off in CGI. And considering the times, I think they pulled it off pretty well. Like, it's an okay suit. It's kind of charming. Although there's a funny scene later in the movie where Johnny comments on Ben's lack of ears.
Where are your ears?
But in that shot, you can clearly see the holes in the costume that aren't meant to be seen. And it's like, could you not cover that in post, or dare I say, cover it during the shot? Considering it took him 3 hours to put the prosthetics on, I can understand why he put on a lot of shirts during the last part of the movies. And the funniest thing in this movie happens during the bridge, where all of the accident and destruction is caused by Ben. So Ben's chilling on top of a bridge, and he sees a guy that's about to commit suicide right next to him. Ben then confronts him about this, and that guy gets freaked out and starts backing up. That guy then falls into traffic, and instead of Ben grabbing him and throwing him out of the way, he decides to shoulder check an entire semi, causing a pileup on the bridge that definitely killed at least 10 people. The movie wants you to believe that the Fantastic Four are this heroic group of people, but just so you know, all of this is because of them. All right, now let's talk about the bad, because, oh boy, there's a lot of it. Starting with Doom. I know he's bad, but I kinda like him. Julian McMahon, rest in peace, is doing the best with what he's given and being told what to do. Dr. Doom in this movie is your standard Elon Musk billionaire type who, unlike the real Elon Musk, successfully aura farms in every scene that he's in. In his opening scene, he is in the back of his own office with the lights off while Reed yaps about science or some nerd thing.
Same old Reed, always stretching, reaching for the...
Say that again?
Every door, clipboard, and coffee cup has his name on it. Even the spaceship is shaped like a V. This man's ego cannot be stopped. Anyway, that's all the good stuff about him. Let's start talking about, the bad stuff. Dr. Doom becomes the villain of the story for no reason at all. When the gang goes up there for the experiment, he goes with them too, which is a choice. I guess he only wanted to go there to propose, which, I guess, but we're on a mission here. Come on, we gotta lock in. It's not like he's doing anything for the project, he's just funding it. The only reason he's up there is that so he can get blasted by 5G solar rays. Once he gets back to Earth, he refuses to go into quarantine for some reason. He's too good for it, apparently. He's also depressed because his own company is going under because of this accident. But here's the thing.
Say that again?
I don't believe that this company would be going under only because of this experiment going wrong. It only affected 5 people, and 4 of those people are right now being treated by the public like superheroes. Do you know how many people Amazon kill on the daily in the US alone? Or that one time Disney tried to arbitrate a lawsuit because of someone who died in one of their restaurants because some guy signed a EULA on Disney Plus? That was real. You guys remember that, right? Also, Dr. Doom is not a doctor at all in this movie. Instead of doing any outrageous experiments on himself to see if he can find a cure or figure out what's wrong with him, he goes to your average walk-in clinic. He doesn't even have his own doctor. He then gets angry and just starts killing doctors. What are we doing here? What's your plan, buddy? I'll tell you his plan. His plan is to get Ben Grimm to betray Reed in order for Ben to get in the machine that Reed created to steal Ben's powers, and then with his powers become mega mode, insane mode powerful. I don't really know, honestly. And the thing about Ben wanting to become a normal person is by the end of the movie, that machine that he went into still exists. He can go back in there and become normal, and whenever, they need to call for an emergency or they need to help someone, he can just jump in there, become Big Rock Man, and then get out and help people. It's still there by the end of the movie. Are we just forgetting this? All right, before we get to Doom's arch nemesis, it's time for us to finally talk about sexism. It's time to talk about Sue Storm. Sue Storm might be one of the most egregiously sexualized characters in comic book history. She has no arc and only exists to drive a wedge between Victor and Reed's relationship. That didn't really exist at all beforehand, but you understand what I'm meaning. I really have no other way to explain this other than to just describe a scene that happens. So with the Ben incident on the bridge, Sue, Reed, and Johnny all get to the bridge and try to get past the crowd, but they can't. So Reed says the best course of action is for her to get naked, go invisible, and push through the crowd for them. Even though Johnny can fly and Reed can stretch and climb over the crowd. But no, getting Jessica Alba naked is exactly what we need to do for plot reasons. Oh, and to make things worse, by the time she gets to the other side, we already see Johnny and Reed getting through the crowd by another way. And to make things even worse, this scene was only added because they got Jessica Alba in the role.
I'm gonna need therapy.
Johnny. Anyway, there's more sexism sprinkled throughout the movie, like the classic scene where Reed and Sue are testing out her abilities and trying to understand it, and Reed says that the reason she can't control her powers is because she can't control her emotions. That's certainly a conclusion, Reed. Reed Richards is the worst character in this movie by far. On top of just being not very well written, he is just a misrepresentation of what the character actually is. The only thing this guy has in common with actual Reed is that he is vaguely smart and has gray hair. Oh, and he stretches, which, that's what he does. He's everything a dumb person finds smart. He's nerdy, awkward with women, likes science, has a beautiful love interest that had a falling out with him in the past, but secretly wants to get back with him. I'm starting to think that this is some guy's power fantasy. The reason he's terribly written is all to the fact that he's just not smart. Speaking of Sue and Reed's relationship is also just kind of nothing. Really vague, and I fully believe that this is one of those relationships in movies that when they originally fell out, they could have easily fixed this relationship with one one conversation and maybe throw in a hug or two, you know? Overall, Fantastic Four 2005 is pretty comparable to Spider-Man 1. Not just because it clearly just copied its villain, but also because it's set in a world that doesn't feel real. Like, the people they interact with on the bridge just don't feel like they should exist. For all its faults, it's got this charm to it that just makes you smile and kind of just enjoy the bad, sloppy movie. But that is a luxury that 2007's Fantastic Four does not have. Imagine if 2005's Fantastic Four tried to take itself seriously. That's what you get with 2007. This movie doesn't know what it wants to do. In the first like 30 minutes, it's fitting the tone with the last movie, and it's like quirky and funny. Johnny is Johnny, Reed is Reed, everyone is happy. And then the Silver Surfer shows up, and then the military come up. And it just becomes like really weirdly grounded. The exact moment this happens is when they're at the bachelor party, and the military shows up and brings Reed and gang to the kitchen. And apparently they forgot a tripod on set. Oh my god, keep the camera still, I'm going to shoot someone. Also, while they're discussing this, Johnny and Ben are just kind of like chilling in the back. Like this movie's trying to be like weirdly serious, and then you just have Rockman in the back just chilling. And then this movie is weirdly trying to be serious until Dr. Doom gets the surfboard. And he still has those corny, just stupid jokes and lines that he had in the previous movie.
Let's all go for a spin!
And it just becomes a cornball fest until Sue dies. Yeah, that's right, she just dies at the end. Hey Reed, you feel that? That's your neck breaking from tonal whiplash. This movie continues supporting my theory that Johnny and Ben are the only two characters that the writers actually care about writing. They try to give Sue and Reed this weirdly forced dynamic of wanting to leave and become normal people, which they can't do that because they forgot that the machine from last movie still exists, so they're just kind of screwed. The wedding scene exists to try to make Reed seem addicted to work and his phone, but it's like, he's trying to save the world. Can you not like postpone the wedding? None of this really gets resolved other than Sue being like, yeah, I'm fine with it, which I guess in the most technical sense is a conflict resolution, but they just kind of brush it over after she comes back from the dead because the Silver Surfer decided to resurrect her because he misses his wife or something. And then he goes and blows up Galactus because he could do that this entire time and just decided to do it now because he misses his wife. Absolute cinema. It's fantastic.
Say that again?
The Silver Surfer in this movie is absolutely nothing. He mogs Johnny once in a race and then just kind of does nothing else in the movie. The story tries to act like he's some mysterious being, but like, come on, we already know who he is. Just kind of give him a character already, all right? Silver Surfer makes such an uninteresting villain that they have to bring back Doom from the statue that he became in the last movie. How does he become not a statue? We don't know. It don't matter, baby. He back. Calling him rushed would be an understatement because all he gets is one scene with Sue where he becomes a Teletubby and projects his backstory on his stomach, then realizes he misses his wife and kills himself. Dr. Doom isn't great either because the government just trusts him for absolutely no reason and lets him in the room with the board for, again, no reason at all. I think the best scene in this movie with Doom is when the military conveniently let him in the room with the board, and then he, shocker, betrays them and steals it. And before he leaves, he does his iconic move, which is pelvic thrusting the general into a fine paste. That's cinema. All right, let's talk about Johnny Storm, because he was great in the first one. And he's still got hitters here. He's got lines. Honestly, I'd argue that he still carries this movie. He has a whole subplot of him being sick with this weird disease that makes him contagious, and it makes him swap powers with whoever he touches. He also gets beaten by the Silver Surfer, so he thinks he lost all his aura and is considering retirement. But this kind of leads him on an arc of, you know, taking things seriously and not making fun of everything that he's in, which honestly is a good idea, and it's got good concepts in it. And I'd argue it's the best part of the movie. Pretty fantastic.
Say that again?
I have one petty gripe in this movie, which is when he's talking to military woman, she says this to him.
Okay. I've been a little off my game lately.
This is not a game.
And then later, when they're trying to escape and she confronts the team, I kind of wish Johnny repeated that line in some sense to show her that, hey, I've changed. I'm kind of cool now. I'm not like a womanizing loser. I somewhat respect women, except not really, not too much. That's too far. I don't know. I'm a sucker for dialogue motifs. What can I say? But with all that said, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer did not make enough to keep this continuity going. And the IP would lay dormant for another 7 years until Fox forgot that they needed to renew their license again. If there was a contest for worst comic book movie ever made, this one would definitely be somewhere near the top of that list. By 2014, this movie was a part of a dying breed of comic book movies that were embarrassed that they were comic book movies. To fully explain what I mean, look at these suits. If I were to find someone who hasn't seen this movie and show them this picture, they'd probably think that they're costumes that belong to some young adult book that got an even worse movie adaptation. Why does the Thing not have pants? He is junkless. You are filling him full of shame. While looking at concept art of this movie, I found this image. Ben Grimm smoking a cigar. I think that's beautiful. So what's bad about this movie? Well, pretty much everything. I can't think of a single redeeming quality of this movie. Sometimes bad movies like 1994 and 2005 will have good scores, they'll have good music to listen to. That is not true with this one. It is just bad all the way through. This movie is a miserable watch. It's fun to like make jokes about it for like 30 minutes, and then you realize you're only halfway through the first act and you feel like you've aged 30 years. You know how 2005 rushed its first act and kind of stalled in the middle of the second? This movie has that opposite problem. It stalled out all the way through the first act and forgot it had to make a movie and then just added a third act, skipping a second entirely. The third act is like 20 minutes. For a second, I forgot that I was watching a Fantastic Four movie, and I started thinking I was watching a documentary about how the US won the space race. The whole plot of this movie is based on this technology that Reed invented, or at least found by himself, giving people the ability to travel between dimensions. Reed invented it when he was a kid and got invited to the Baxter building when he was definitely not a 30-year-old trying to be a high schooler. The crazy thing about that is that Ben was not invited, even though he's been helping him since childhood, and he would know as much as Reed how this works. Sure, he wouldn't be as smart, but he's definitely worthy of being an assistant. Honestly, he's more qualified than Johnny is. Johnny just cares about a car and racing. The only reason Johnny is here is just so he can get his powers and say, flame on. Speaking of catchphrases, the Thing's signature line is something he got from his abusive brother, who would say that every time he would go to beat him.
Hey, clobbering time.
That's certainly a creative choice. The characters in this movie are completely detached from their comic book counterparts and are only connected in the vaguest sense. On top of this, the writing is bad and the actors cannot redeem it. I never thought you could make Miles Teller or Michael B. Jordan terrible at their job, but this movie managed to do it. Reed is even worse in this movie from 2005. He's even more of a dork and awkward around people, and honestly, it feels like what Hollywood elites think autistic people act like. It's just not it, dog. Sue's relationship with Reed just like isn't a thing in this movie. I forgot they were like into each other. I'm not even sure they're dating by the end of the movie. They have one scene in the library where she's just being quirky because she listens to music and he's being awkward, and like that's kind of it. And then they do that thing again where they put Doom and Reed in a love triangle because that's all they can do with women in these movies for some reason. Doom and Reed's relationship in this movie is even worse because they don't even know each other at all, which makes the conflict by the end of the movie kind of just detached, and they're just kind of fighting a big blue sky beam. That's all the movie is. They kind of just push him in there and it's fine. It's all good. Victor Von Doom is a Redditor in this movie. He eats Chinese food, he trades crypto, gets mad when men talk to women that he's vaguely interested in, and hates employment. When the gang decides to go to space because they're all drunk, Doom is the one that gets left behind. And this Dr. Doom is just so disgusting. They're trying to make the spacesuit that he wore get grafted to his skin, and it's just like not good. Along with the rest of that alien environment getting stuck to him, and then he just gets the ability to explode heads. Unfortunately, he forgot how to use that ability when it came to the final act, but you know, it's fine, yeah. Ben is just kind of a normal dude that just doesn't talk that much in the movie. And then when the accident happens, he completely changes character. Like, he's not the same person. And no, I'm not just saying that because he becomes a big rock monster. Johnny Storm is also just a nothing character. He just kind of wants to fix his car and that's it. And then when he gets his powers, he just flies around, really. Again, there's not much to say about any of these characters, really. He has no riz, no aura, no sauce. His dynamic with Ben is just weird too. They kind of forgot to develop it throughout the movie. And then at the end of the movie, he just makes an offhanded comment at him, which is just so rude.
How about two guys, a girl, and the thing that nobody wanted? Say that again?
This movie is so bad that the director himself denounced the movie right before it came out. He just washed his hands clean of this travesty. Didn't help his career though, because he hasn't made a movie since. And here's the thing, if you ignore all the bad stuff about this movie, which is almost the entire movie, I think there's a good idea here. This far more grounded, down-to-earth version of the origin story that focuses far more on the characters rather than the superpowered science of it all built around this ragtag group of scientists trying to invent interdimensional travel. Sounds like a really good idea for a TV show. Switch up some of the character dynamics so that the story feels feels a bit better. Make Victor a friend of Reed and Ben during college. Nurture that friendly banter between Ben and Johnny. Develop a real relationship between Reed and Sue. And hey, maybe even throw Doom in there if you can actually make it, you know, good. And most importantly, make Johnny white again. That was a joke, please. That was a joke. I want to make myself clear. That was a joke. Then halfway through season 1, or even the finale of season 1, you change the tone to fit the body horror-esque vibe that the movie was trying to accomplish, drive a wedge between Doom and Reed's relationship, as Doom goes down the path of trying to cure himself through dark magic, and ultimately decides that his powers aren't a curse, they're a weapon to fix the world. Am I cooking? I think I'm cooking. And before anyone starts saying, Fantastic Four is supposed to be campy and fun and lighthearted, shut up. All I'll say to that is before Batman Begins in The Dark Knight, Batman was pretty campy. And then after the Dark Knight trilogy, we got The Batman, which is one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. So sit back and let me cook, all right? Hello. So the reason I'm recording this after everything is because I've had a lot of time to think about this movie, and I'm kind of conflicted. At first I liked it, I thought it was great, yippee, we finally got a good Fantastic Four movie. But then as I thought about it, I kind of like hated it more. Not to say that I hated the movie, but it was just crawling out of me. I did enjoy this movie. It is a fun watch. The tone, vibe, style, all there, all distinct, very well executed. If there's one thing to take away from this movie that I think the MCU needs to do more is actually going out of their way to establish vibe, style, tone. You know, the things that make movies feel like unique experiences. All that was great. And on top of that, the characters are great as well. I think all of these characters are represented great, and I think they're all just good. They're just good characters. Ben is my personal favorite because Eben Moss is there, the guy from Andor in that one cooking show. Now to talk about the bad stuff, because there's a lot of it. The plot of this movie solely defends on these almighty, all-powerful villains being stupid. For example, Galactus has, you know, telekinesis. He can force pull people and force them to do whatever he wants. He can just make them stand still, and he just doesn't do any of that during their first encounter. At first I was like, all right, maybe he can only do it with metallic objects because he can only do it to Silver Surfer, and then he does it to the baby. And in fact, I think he does it to the baby in their first interaction. I think he is actually pulling Franklin out, which adds another problem, which is Sue going on this first contact mission to talk to Galactus. I have a problem with this. But is it in character for this version of Sue to go on that mission? Kind of. I can see this version of Sue going on that mission, but we never see a scene of the team talking about that decision because she's pregnant, so it's a pretty big deal. Reed would absolutely not be okay with sending her on this mission, and that includes Johnny and Ben. Of course, I think Sue would defend her position and force them to let her go, but that scene is not there. A defense I've seen for this is that Sue's going there to specifically negotiate with Galactus and kind of lead that discussion, but the problem is she doesn't lead that discussion. It is Reed leading that conversation. And honestly, after this first encounter, the movie should be over. Galactus made it very clear in that discussion that he actually doesn't really care about negotiating with them. He will just take what he wants. So why doesn't he? GG, it's over. On top of that, Silver Surfer's powers are pretty inconsistent. There are multiple times throughout the movie where it should end because of her, but it doesn't because we need the plot to push forward. But we got a cool chase sequence around a black hole, which was cool, sure. But then we land on Earth, when everything falls apart. Number one, Reed just telling everyone what Galactus wants is the dumbest idea ever. Reed, you are the smartest man alive.
I'm the smartest man alive. Reed Richards.
Now, again, I could see a version of the scene working. Maybe when he comes back to Earth, you can just see the distraught on his face as he goes into the Baxter building and starts having a panic attack. And then when he starts getting pressured by the news, he just cracks and blurts it out. But that doesn't even happen. He just tells them, all right, bro, cool. Number two, Reed Richards planned to teleport the Earth. What? There is so much science that has to go into this plan for it to actually work and be believable. On top of that, there would be a million scientists around the world desperately trying to peer review Reed's research. And at that point, Galactus would already be at Earth, so it doesn't matter. And the worst of it is that when Reed is describing to the public how he's gonna pull this off, he says this.
The difference between a planet and an egg is only scale.
Reed.
I'm the smartest man alive. Reed Richards.
If I had a week, I could not list all of the differences between an egg and the Earth. When and if you teleport the Earth, what's going to happen to the Earth's rotation, the Earth's orbit around the sun, our momentum? Are we keeping our momentum? What's going to happen to that? Habitable zone, temperature, sustainability, solar winds, the integrity of our atmosphere, the moon. Are we teleporting the moon? They never show it. Please tell me we're teleporting the moon, or else we are cooked. And need I remind you, from a public position, all of this could be avoided if you just give up the baby. I do not believe that the entire world is agreeing to this. I'm sorry. Especially since Latveria is canon to this universe, I just can't imagine someone who might be pushing back on everything Reed's saying that is conveniently in the mid-credits scene. I can't think of a single guy. And then at the end of the movie, they decide, oh wait, they can just teleport Galactus. And the way they do that is with this Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny trap, with the kid conveniently placed in the portal. And then when they distract Galactus, they switch it out with a fake one. Reed, do you really think Galactus, this billion-year-old being, is gonna fall for this? He is not Tom and Jerry. He is not Roadrunner.
And the smartest man alive. Reed Richards.
Also, when Johnny switches out Franklin, he just leaves him at the Baxter building, which is a choice. You know, a great idea would be to, send him far away from New York, maybe, the opposite side of the country. Also, with this movie, I've been trying to figure out what the theme of the movie is. Not to say that theme makes or breaks the movie, but there's definitely a message in this somewhere that I haven't quite cracked, and I don't actually think there's one thoroughly thought out. In the vaguest sense, I could say family is the theme, but family is not a theme. That's a word. Fast and Furious called. They want their themes back. Another one that you could say is sacrifice. What are you willing to lose to save the people that you want to protect and the people you love? But the thing is, nobody actually loses anything. The only thing people lost was like their homes that Galactus destroyed that, again, could have all been avoided if you just gave up the baby. Come to think of it, maybe making a movie about the most elite class of people making the decisions for the entirety of the human race isn't actually a good idea. I've seen some people saying that this movie is just the trolley problem and saying, oh, this was a great subversion of the trolley problem. They were able to save both their child and humanity. I'm sorry, that's not how the trolley problem works. You either save one or save many. You cannot do both. And what I think would have been really interesting for this movie is if they lost. What if we had a Fantastic Four team going into Doomsday that lost? They tried to counteract the trolley problem. They tried to do both, and they failed because they wanted to save their child. I don't know about you, but that sounds like cinema to me. Now, another problem I have with this movie is Pedro Pascal. Yes, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say, I am tired of Pedro Pascal. He's bad in Mando. He's bad in both seasons of The Last of Us. He's bad in Gladiator 2. And the worst part is they didn't even cast him in this movie to play Reed Richards. They cast him to play Pedro Pascal. He could be great in this role. He could be great at any role. But no one will let him actually do his job because they're banking off the fact that a bunch of Twitter stans are gonna watch this movie and call him daddy. Other than him, Vanessa Kirby is fine as Sue. I think she's all right. I think Joseph Quinn is pretty good at Human Torch, but the thing for him that really makes me not like it is his hair. His hair is god-awful in this movie. Honestly, take this Johnny, give him the hair from '94, and it will be cinema. So the big question is, did this break the Fantastic Four curse? Were they able to make a good movie? If I was being generous, it'd be a 6. If I was being realistic, it'd be a 5. But for the bit, I think I'm gonna say Fantastic 4 out of 10. But the big question about the curse is this movie going to actually be successful? Maybe. It's kinda not doing well, which kinda sucks because this might be the only MCU movie that I've ever wanted to succeed based on what it does right. It gets characters right and it gets vibe, tone, and style right. If you have those 4 things correct in a movie, I will enjoy it. The Suicide Squad is one of the best examples of that. Great characters, great tone, great vibe and style to it. Plot, we don't talk about that. I think it is kind of one of those OG Marvel movies in a sense. I think that's what elevates it above the MCU slop that we've gotten recently. Will the curse ever be broken for good? Check back in another 10 years. But that's all I got for today. Thank you to the members who have recently joined. There's more of you guys. I see you. If you want to join and become a member, it's only $2 a month. That's pretty good, honestly. That's a pretty good deal. I have nothing else to say, so goodbye.